I gifted my daughter our family home. But her husband said, "Now your place is in the garage. This is our house, old woman." I silently nodded and left. He didn't know the house was still registered in my name. The next morning, Good day, dear listeners. It's Clara again. I'm glad you're here with me. Please like this video and listen to my story till the end, and let me know which city you're listening from. That way I can see how far my story has traveled. I had lived in that house for 43 years. 43 years of memories soaked into every floorboard, every crack in the kitchen tile, every pencil mark on the doorframe where I'd measured my daughter Sarah's height as she grew. My husband, Tom, and I had bought it back in 1981, when the neighborhood was just starting to develop and the maple tree in the front yard was barely taller than me. Now that tree towered over the roof, and Tom had been gone for 5 years. The house had become too much for me, or so everyone kept saying. Sarah would visit every Sunday with her husband Derek, and she'd eye the peeling paint on the porch, the gutter that sagged slightly on the east side, the way I struggled to carry the trash bins to the curb. "Mom, you don't need to deal with all this anymore," she'd say, squeezing my hand. "You should be enjoying your retirement, not worrying about home repairs." Maybe she was right. I was 72 and my knees weren't what they used to be. The house felt emptier every year, echoing with absence. So when Sarah suggested she and Derek move in to help take care of things, it seemed like a perfect solution. We'd all live together. I wouldn't be alone anymore. They'd handle the maintenance. It made sense. That's what I told myself when I signed the quitclaim deed at the lawyer's office 3 months ago, transferring the house into Sarah's name. "Just a formality, Mom," Sarah had assured me. "It'll make things easier for estate planning." Derek had smiled beside her, that charming smile that had won me over when they first started dating 8 years ago. He worked in real estate development, always impeccably dressed, always knowing the right thing to say. The first month after they moved in was wonderful. Sarah cooked dinners, Derek fixed the gutter, and we'd sit together in the living room watching old movies. I felt like I had my family back. But then small things started to shift. Derek began making comments about updating the house. "This wallpaper is pretty dated, Margaret," he'd say, running his finger along the rose pattern I'd chosen in 1985. "We should really modernize." I'd laugh it off, but something in his tone felt less like a suggestion and more like a statement of intent. Then there were the conversations that would stop abruptly when I entered a room. The way Derek's eyes would flicker over the furniture, like he was taking inventory. How he'd mentioned, casually, that the house was easily worth $800,000 in this market, maybe more. But I pushed those concerns aside. Sarah was my daughter. She loved me. I was probably just being a paranoid old woman, too set in my ways. The breaking point came on a Tuesday afternoon in October. I had spent the morning tending to my small garden out back, pulling up the last of the tomato plants before the first frost. When I came inside through the kitchen door, brushing dirt from my hands, I heard voices in the living room. My living room, though I was starting to catch myself before thinking of it that way. Derek's voice carried clearly. "We can't keep tiptoeing around her forever, Sarah. This is our house now. We need to make that clear." My heart stopped. I stood frozen in the kitchen doorway. Sarah's response was softer, conflicted. "She's my mother, Derek. We can't just..." "Just what?" "She gave us the house. She doesn't get to dictate how we live in it anymore." I should have walked away. I should have made noise, announced my presence. But I stood there, rooted, listening to my daughter's silence. A silence that said more than any words could. That evening, I tried to pretend I hadn't heard anything. We had dinner together, pot roast, one of Sarah's favorites. But I noticed things I'd been blind to before. The way Derek sat at the head of the table, where Tom used to sit. where I'd sat for 5 years after he passed. The way he spoke about our plans for the house, without including me in that hour. After dinner, I went to clean up, and Derek stopped me. Actually, Margaret, we need to talk to you about something. The way he said my name, not Mom, like he'd called me for years, made my blood run cold. What happened next would change everything. Sarah sat on the sofa, her hands folded in her lap, not meeting my eyes. Derek stood beside the fireplace, one arm resting on the mantel with an ease that suggested ownership. My stomach twisted. "We've been thinking," Derek began, his voice measured, almost practiced, "that it might be time to discuss new living arrangements. For everyone's comfort." I lowered myself slowly into the armchair, Tom's old reading chair. "What kind of arrangements?" "The house needs work, significant updates. We're planning a major renovation starting next month." He paused, letting that sink in. "It's going to be chaotic. Dust, noise, contractors everywhere. It wouldn't be comfortable for you." "I've lived through renovations before," I said quietly. "We're also thinking about starting a family soon," Sarah interjected, finally looking up. Her eyes were apologetic but determined. "We'll need the space, Mom. The nursery, a playroom." "There are 4 bedrooms," I pointed out. Derek's expression hardened almost imperceptibly. "Margaret, let's be honest. You're not getting any younger. Wouldn't you be more comfortable somewhere designed for seniors? A nice community with people your own age, activities, medical care on site?" The words hit me like a slap. A senior community. They wanted to put me in a home. "This is my home," I said, hearing my voice shake despite my effort to control it. "Actually," Derek said, and his tone shifted to something colder, more factual. "Legally, it's Sarah's home now, and we think it's best if you started looking for other options. We're not trying to be cruel, but we need to think about our future." I looked at Sarah, waiting for her to contradict him, to defend me. She bit her lip. "Mom, maybe it would be better. Those communities are really nice. You'd have friends, activities. You want me to leave?" The words came out flat. "We want what's best for everyone," Derek corrected. "We'll help you find a place, of course. We'll even help with the moving costs." How generous. They'd help me leave the house I'd lived in for 43 years, the house I'd foolishly signed over to them. That night, lying in my bed, the same bed Tom and I had shared for decades, I stared at the ceiling and took stock of my situation. The house was in Sarah's name. I had no legal claim to it anymore. I'd trusted my daughter, and she'd chosen her husband over her mother. What options did I have? I could fight. Challenge the transfer somehow. But on what grounds? I'd signed the papers willingly. No one had coerced me. A lawyer would laugh me out of their office. I could beg, plead with Sarah to reconsider. But the thought made me sick. I'd raised her better than this, and if she couldn't see what Derek was doing to her, to us, then my begging wouldn't change anything. Or I could leave quietly, let them win, spend my remaining years in some sterile community center, playing bingo and waiting to die. None of these options were acceptable. I got up and went to my desk, the old oak secretary desk that had been my mother's. In the bottom drawer, I kept all my important papers. I pulled out the folder labeled House Documents with trembling hands. There, clipped together, were all the papers from the transfer. The quit-claim deed Sarah had asked me to sign, the notary's stamp, I stopped, reading more carefully. My heart began to pound. The deed had been signed and notarized, yes. But I'd been so focused on the signing itself that I hadn't followed up on what happened after. I pulled out my reading glasses and examined the document more closely in the lamplight. There was no recording stamp, no file number from the county recorder's office. For a deed transfer to be legally complete, it had to be recorded with the county. Until then, I was still the legal owner. The paper Sarah had in her possession was meaningless if it hadn't been filed. Had Derek known this, or had he simply assumed it was done? A plan began forming in my mind. It was risky. It would damage my relationship with Sarah, perhaps irreparably. But what relationship did we have left if she was willing to throw me out? I looked at the clock. 2:47 a.m. The county recorder's office would open at 8 a.m. I had one chance to fix this. One narrow window before Derek and Sarah realized their mistake. But I needed to be smart about it. I couldn't just show up at their door and announce what I'd discovered. I needed to plan carefully, gather what I needed, and most importantly, I needed to understand exactly what I was dealing with. The next morning, I came downstairs at my usual time. Derek was already in the kitchen, drinking coffee and scrolling through his phone. He barely looked up when I entered. "Good morning," I said pleasantly. "Morning." His tone was dismissive. I poured myself coffee, my hands steady despite the adrenaline coursing through me. "I've been thinking about what you said last night, about finding a new place." That got his attention. He looked up, surprise flickering across his face before settling into satisfaction. "Oh? I think you might be right," I lied smoothly. "I could use a fresh start, less responsibility. Was I really doing this? Pretending to surrender?" Derek's smile widened. "I'm glad you're being reasonable about this, Margaret. It really is for the best. I'll need some time, of course," I continued, taking a sip of coffee, "to sort through everything, find the right place. A few weeks, maybe?" "Of course, of course. Take your time." He was practically glowing with victory. "We're not trying to rush you out." Liar. But I smiled and nodded. After he left for work, I waited until Sarah went to her yoga class before making my move. I had roughly 2 hours. I grabbed my purse, the folder of house documents, and my car keys. My hands trembled as I started the engine of my old Honda Civic, but my resolve was steel. The county recorder's office was in the municipal building downtown, a squat brick structure I'd driven past 1,000 times without really seeing it. I'd never had reason to visit before. Inside, fluorescent lights hummed above linoleum floors. A tired-looking clerk sat behind a plexiglass window. "I need to check on a property deed," I said. "To see if it's been recorded." She slid a form toward me. "Fill this out. Address of the property and the date range you want searched." My heart hammered as I wrote down my address. My address, I reminded myself, until proven otherwise. I handed it back with my driver's license. She disappeared into a back room. Every second felt like an hour. What if I was wrong? What if Derek had recorded it and I just couldn't see the stamp? She returned with a file. "Nothing recorded for that property in the past 6 months. Last recorded document was," she checked, "2019. A satisfaction of mortgage, when I'd paid off the house after Tom died." So if someone signed a quitclaim deed 3 months ago but never filed it, then it's not legally binding. The property's still under the previous owner's name. She looked at me curiously. "Is there a problem?" "No problem," I said, my voice barely steady. "Just checking. Thank you." I walked back to my car on legs that felt like rubber. I sat in the driver's seat for a full 5 minutes, processing what I'd just confirmed. The house was still mine, legally, completely mine. Derek and Sarah thought they owned it, but they didn't. But now what? If I recorded a new deed back to myself, Derek would find out immediately. He worked in real estate. He probably had alerts set up for the property. And I couldn't just tell them the original deed was never filed. They'd rush to record it themselves. No, I needed to be smarter than that. I needed to understand why Derek wanted this house so badly. An $800,000 property, yes, but there was something more. The way he'd talked about renovations, about plans, the way his eyes assessed everything. I drove to the public library and asked the reference librarian to help me access property records online. She showed me how to search by address. Within minutes, I was looking at the entire history of my property and the surrounding neighborhood. That's when I saw it. 3 properties on our street had sold in the past year, all to the same LLC, Pinnacle Development Group. I searched the name and felt my blood run cold. Derek's company. He was the managing partner. I pulled up the zoning maps. Our neighborhood was currently zoned residential single-family. But there was a proposal submitted 4 months ago, before Derek and Sarah had even moved in with me, to rezone the entire block for multifamily residential. High-density housing, apartment buildings. If that rezoning went through, the properties Pinnacle already owned would skyrocket in value. And my corner lot, the largest on the block, would be the crown jewel. Derek had been planning this all along. The concerned son-in-law routine, the suggestions about senior living, even courting Sarah in the first place. How much of it had been a calculated move toward acquiring this property? I felt sick, but I also felt something else. A cold, clarifying anger. I printed out everything I could find. Rezoning proposals, LLC ownership records, property sales data. I created a folder labeled Garden Club and slipped all the documents inside. If anyone looked, they'd just see an old woman's papers. When I got home, Sarah was back from yoga, making lunch. "Where were you, Mom?" she asked. "Just running some errands. Looking at a few senior communities, actually." Another lie. They were coming easier now. Her face brightened with relief. "Really? That's great. Which ones?" I named a couple I'd seen advertised. Just preliminary looking, nothing decided yet. That evening, Derek came home with takeout Thai food. My favorite, a peace offering. We ate together, and they talked about their renovation plans. Knocking down the wall between the kitchen and dining room. Converting the garage into a home office. Adding a deck out back. Every word confirmed what I'd discovered. They were talking about these renovations as investments, not as creating a home. Derek kept mentioning resale value and market appeal. I smiled and nodded and asked questions, playing the part of the cooperative mother-in-law, but I was watching them carefully now, cataloging every tell, every glance they exchanged. After dinner, Derek excused himself to take a call in the other room. I heard fragments through the door. "Still working on it. Needs a few more weeks. She's being reasonable. No complications." Who was he talking to? A business partner? An investor? Sarah touched my arm. "Mom, I know this is hard, but you'll be happier. You'll see." Did she really believe that? Or was she just telling herself what she needed to hear to live with what they were doing? "I'm sure you're right, honey," I said softly. That night, I couldn't sleep. I lay in bed, staring at the shadows on the ceiling, and made a decision. I wasn't just going to protect my house. I was going to make sure Derek Lawson understood exactly who he'd tried to manipulate. Tomorrow, I would take the first real step. Tomorrow, I would visit a lawyer. I found a lawyer through a friend from church, Carol Henderson, whose daughter practiced family law. "She's tough," Carol said when I called her. "If you're in trouble, Emily's who you want." Emily Henderson's office was in a converted Victorian house near the university. She was younger than I expected, maybe 40, with sharp eyes and a no-nonsense handshake. I spread my documents across her desk. The unrecorded deed, the property records, the information about Pinnacle Development. She studied everything in silence, occasionally making notes. Finally, she looked up. Mrs. Crawford, you're still the legal owner of this property. This deed, she tapped the paper, is worthless until it's recorded. But I have to ask, did you intend to transfer the property to your daughter? Yes, I admitted, but I didn't intend to be pushed out of my own home. And you believe your son-in-law has been targeting your property for a development scheme? I don't believe it. I know it. Emily leaned back in her chair. Here's what I recommend. First, we file a new deed immediately, transferring the property from you to yourself. It sounds redundant, but it puts a fresh timestamp on the records and confirms your ownership. Second, we send a cease and desist letter to your daughter and son-in-law, making it clear that you're aware the original transfer was never completed and that you're revoking any permission for them to claim ownership. My chest tightened. That will destroy my relationship with Sarah. Mrs. Crawford, I understand this is your daughter, but from what you've told me, that relationship is already compromised. The question is whether you're willing to lose your home to preserve the illusion of family harmony. She was right. I knew she was right. Do it, I said. We filed the paperwork that afternoon. Emily assured me it would be recorded within 24 hours. The cease and desist letters would be sent via certified mail and email within 2 days. What you need to understand, Emily warned as I was leaving, is that this will likely get ugly. If your son-in-law has as much invested in this scheme as it appears, he won't go quietly. Be prepared for threats, possibly even legal action, though he doesn't have a leg to stand on. I understand, I said. But I didn't. Not really. Not until 3 days later when Derek came home early from work and found me in the kitchen. His face was a mask of barely controlled rage. In his hand was his phone, and I could see an email notification on the screen. Emily's letter. What the hell is this? His voice was low, dangerous. Sarah appeared behind him, her eyes red-rimmed. She'd been crying. Mom, what did you do? I protected my home, I said, keeping my voice steady despite the fear crawling up my spine. Derek stepped closer. He was a big man, 6'2", broad-shouldered. He'd never intimidated me before, but now he was using his size deliberately, crowding into my space. You senile old bitch! Do you have any idea what you've done? Derek! Sarah gasped. Shut up, Sarah. He didn't even look at her. His eyes were locked on me. You signed that deed. You agreed to give us this house. A deed that was never recorded. That's not my fault. We had an agreement. We had a conversation about me being part of this family, not about you stealing my property for your real estate scheme. His expression shifted to shock, then calculation. You've been digging into my business. It wasn't hard. Public records are public, Derek. He laughed, but there was no humor in it. You think you're so smart. You think you've won. He leaned down, his face inches from mine. I've put 6 months of work into this deal. I have investors expecting a return. I have contractors lined up. I have a rezoning hearing in 3 weeks. You are not going to destroy this. The property is mine. I'm not selling. Then we'll make your life hell until you do. His voice dropped to a whisper. You're an old woman living alone in a big house. Anything could happen. A fall down the stairs, a gas leak. You could forget to turn off the stove one night. The threat was unmistakable. Sarah heard it too. Derek, stop it. You're scaring me. He whirled on her. You want to live in that cramped apartment again? You want to go back to struggling for money? This house is worth $1 million in the right development package. We could set ourselves up for life. Not at the expense of my mother. Your mother gave us this house. She doesn't get to take it back just because she changed her mind. I'd heard enough. I pulled out my phone and held it up. The voice recorder app was running, and had been since Derek walked in. I've recorded this entire conversation, I said quietly, including your threats against my safety. If anything happens to me, anything at all, this recording goes to the police. Derek's face went purple. For a moment, I thought he might actually hit me. Sarah must have thought so too, because she grabbed his arm. Derek, we're leaving now. Like hell. Now. Something in Sarah's voice got through to him. He jerked away from her grip, knocked a coffee mug off the counter, Tom's favorite mug. It shattered on the floor and stormed out. Sarah lingered for a moment, tears streaming down her face. Mom, I didn't know. I swear I didn't know he was. Go with your husband, Sarah. Make your choice. She flinched like I'd slapped her. Then she turned and left. I stood in my kitchen, surrounded by broken ceramic, and my legs finally gave out. I sank into a chair and let myself shake. What had I done? I'd just declared war on my own daughter and her husband. Derek had threatened my life, and I was alone in this house with no one to protect me. I called Emily Henderson. Her voice was calm and professional. Send me that recording immediately. I'll file for a restraining order first thing tomorrow. And Mrs. Crawford? Maybe stay with a friend for a few days. I packed a bag and drove to Carol Henderson's house. She welcomed me in without questions, made up her guest room, and handed me a cup of tea. You're doing the right thing, she said. I wanted to believe her. But that night, lying in a strange bed in a strange house, I felt nothing but fear and loss. I'd won the first battle. But the war was just beginning. I stayed at Carol's for 3 days. Each morning I'd check my phone, half expecting news that something had happened to my house, a fire, a break-in, something. But nothing came. Just silence. On the 4th day, Sarah called. Mom, please, can we talk? My finger hovered over the decline button, but she was still my daughter. What is it, Sarah? Can I come see you? Just me. Derek's at work. I looked at Carol, who was pretending to read the newspaper, but clearly listening. She gave me a slight nod. I'm at Carol Henderson's. You can come here. 30 minutes later, Sarah sat across from me in Carol's sunlit kitchen. She looked terrible. Dark circles under her eyes, no makeup, wearing the same clothes I'd seen her in 2 days ago. Carol had tactfully disappeared upstairs. Mom, I'm so sorry. The words tumbled out. I had no idea Derek was planning all this. The development stuff, the investors. He never told me any of it. But you did agree to ask me to leave. She flinched. He said it would be better for you, that you'd be safer, have more support. I believed him because I wanted to believe him. And what do you believe now? I don't know what to believe anymore. She twisted her wedding ring. He's been different since you left, angry all the time. He keeps having these long phone calls with people I don't know, and when I ask about it, he tells me to stay out of his business. She looked up at me with desperate eyes. But he's still my husband. He loves me. I know he does. Does he, Sarah? Or does he love what marrying you could get him? Don't say that. Please, don't say that. I reached across the table and took her hand. Honey, I need you to really think about how this relationship started. When did he first become interested in you? Was it before or after he knew who your family was? Where you came from? She pulled her hand away. You think he only married me for your house? That's insane. Is it? Check his business records, Sarah. Look at when he formed Pinnacle Development. Look at when he started buying properties on our street. I can't believe you're asking me to spy on my husband. I'm asking you to protect yourself. From what? From the man I love? From the man who wants to build a future with me? She stood up, her chair scraping loudly against the floor. I came here to try to fix things between us, and you're just attacking Derek again. I'm telling you the truth. No, you're being paranoid and controlling. Derek was right about that. She grabbed her purse. He sent me here with a message. He wants to make peace. He's willing to forget about the house to let you keep it if you'll just drop the restraining order and stop interfering with his business. So that's what this was. Not an apology, a negotiation. And if I don't? Sarah's face hardened. Then he'll fight you. He has lawyers too, Mom. Good ones. And he says there are ways to challenge your mental competency, especially at your age. If he can prove you're not capable of managing your own affairs, he threatened to have me declared mentally incompetent. The words came out cold, flat. Sarah had the grace to look ashamed. He's just trying to protect our interests. Get out. Mom, get out of this house, Sarah. And don't come back until you're ready to see what your husband really is. She left crying. I sat at Carol's kitchen table and didn't cry. I was past crying. I was past hurt. I was moving into something else entirely, a cold, clear determination. Carol came downstairs. You okay? He's trying to have me declared incompetent. That bastard. He can't actually do that, you know. You'd need to be evaluated by doctors, and you're sharp as a tack. It doesn't matter if he can succeed. The threat alone is meant to scare me into giving up. Are you scared? I thought about it. No, I'm angry. Carol smiled. Good. Anger is useful. That afternoon, I went to the senior center in town. Ironically, the kind of place Derek had wanted to send me. But I wasn't there to move in. I was there to talk to people. Carol came with me, introducing me to her friends, women who'd lived in our town for decades, or Margaret Stokes had been a real estate agent for 40 years before retiring. Let me see those development documents, she said, adjusting her reading glasses. She studied them for 10 minutes, then whistled. This rezoning is shady as hell. There's supposed to be community input before these things go through. Did anyone in your neighborhood get notified? I don't think so, because they buried it in the municipal notices where nobody looks. That's illegal. She tapped the paper. We can fight this at the council meeting. If enough neighbors show up opposing it, they'll table the whole thing. Patricia Vollmer had been a nurse. And if this Derek person is threatening your competency, I can get 3 doctors to evaluate you and sign off on your mental fitness. I'll make some calls. Judith Chen, a retired lawyer, offered to consult with Emily Henderson on my case pro bono. I hate bullies, she said simply. By the time I left the senior center, I had a team. A group of fierce, experienced women who dealt with men like Derek their entire lives and knew exactly how to fight back. Carol drove me back to her house. You're not alone in this, you know. I'm beginning to see that. That night, Derek called my phone. I let it go to voicemail. He called again and again. On the 4th call, I answered. What do you want, Derek? I want to talk reasonably, adult to adult. Then talk. This doesn't have to be a war, Margaret. I'm willing to make you a very generous offer. $200,000 cash for you to sign over the property and drop all legal action against me. You could buy yourself a nice condo, have money left over. Start fresh. No? Think about it carefully. This is more than fair. I said no. His voice hardened. You're making a mistake. I have resources you can't imagine. I will bury you in legal fees. I will drag your name through the mud. I hung up. 5 minutes later, Sarah texted, Please reconsider. Derek's offer is generous. Don't throw away our relationship over pride. I didn't respond. I forwarded the recording of Derek's call to Emily Henderson and went to bed. Tomorrow, I'd start fighting back in earnest. The restraining order was approved. Derek had to stay at least 500 feet away from me in the house. Emily told me he'd been furious at the hearing, had called the judge biased, had nearly been held in contempt. Good. I moved back home after a week. The house felt different now, not quite safe, but mine again in a way it hadn't been since Sarah and Derek moved in. All their belongings were gone. They'd cleared out while I was at Carol's, taking everything right down to the curtain rods in their bedroom. The silence was both peaceful and unsettling. Margaret Stokes helped me draft a letter to all my neighbors, informing them about the rezoning proposal and inviting them to a meeting at my house. 18 people showed up, nearly everyone on the block. They were shocked, angry. No one had been properly notified, just as Margaret suspected. "We bought here for the neighborhood," Tom Brennan from 3 houses down said. "No way are we letting some developer turn this into apartment buildings." We organized. Sign-up sheets for who would speak at the zoning hearing. Contact information for the city council members. Margaret knew all the procedures, all the loopholes. Derek's carefully laid plans were unraveling. That's when Sarah called again. "Mom, please. Derek wants to apologize, in person. Can we come over? He has a restraining order. The lawyer said we can request a temporary modification for mediation purposes. Please, give him a chance to make this right." Against my better judgment, and despite Emily Henderson's strong objections, I agreed to a supervised meeting at Emily's office. Neutral ground, witnesses. They arrived together. Derek wore a suit and a contrite expression that looked as fake as a $3 bill. Sarah looked hopeful, desperate. They sat across from me at the conference table, Emily beside me, watching Derek like a hawk. "Margaret, I owe you an apology," Derek began, his voice smooth, practiced. "I let my business ambitions cloud my judgment. I never should have spoken to you the way I did. The threats, the anger, that wasn't me. I was under enormous pressure from investors, and I took it out on you. That was wrong." I said nothing, let him talk. I've thought a lot about this situation, and I realize now that I approached it all wrong. This isn't about business. This is about family. He reached over and took Sarah's hand. "Sarah and I, we want you to be part of our lives, part of our future. But we need to find a solution that works for everyone." "What kind of solution?" I asked flatly. "What if we formed a partnership? You keep legal ownership of the house, but you give us permission to proceed with the development. We'd split the proceeds 3 ways. You'd make at least $500,000, maybe more. You could buy any property you wanted, and we'd all benefit." Sarah leaned forward. "Mom, it's a good deal. You'd have financial security for the rest of your life. We could even write it into a contract that you'd have a room in our new place if you wanted. Or we'd help you buy something nearby. We'd still be family." I looked at my daughter, really looked at her. She believed this. She actually believed that this was a reasonable compromise, that I should be grateful for the offer. "Let me see if I understand," I said slowly. "You want me to give up my home of 43 years, the house where I raised my daughter and buried my husband, where every corner holds a memory. You want me to hand it over to be demolished and turned into cheap apartment buildings, and I should be thankful for the money." "It's not like that," Sarah protested. "Then what is it like?" Derek's mask slipped slightly. "It's pragmatic. The house is just a building, Margaret. Bricks and wood. The memories are in here." He tapped his head. "You can take those anywhere. Can you take a marriage anywhere, Derek? The way you're taking Sarah away from her family?" His jaw tightened. "I'm not taking her anywhere. She chose me. She chose our future together. Did she? Or did you spend 8 years manipulating her into choosing you?" "Mom," Sarah's voice cracked. "Why are you doing this? Why can't you just be happy for us?" "Because he's using you, Sarah. He targeted you to get to this property. Everything, the romance, the marriage, moving in with me, it was all calculated." Derek stood abruptly. "I've tried being nice. I've tried being reasonable, but you're a bitter, paranoid old woman who can't stand to see her daughter happy. Derek, sit down, Emily warned. He ignored her, leaning across the table toward me. You think you've won because you got a restraining order? Because you rallied some old biddies to fight my rezoning? I have been in this business for 15 years. I have connections you can't imagine. City council members who owe me favors. Inspectors who'll find code violations in that ancient house of yours. Lawyers who'll drag you through court until you're bankrupt from legal fees. Derek! Sarah grabbed his arm, horrified. He shook her off. No, she needs to hear this. You're playing a game you can't win, Margaret. I will make your life a living hell. Every day you stay in that house, I will make you regret it. I'll file noise complaints. I'll contest your property boundaries. I'll dig up every piece of dirt I can find and spread it around town. By the time I'm done, you'll be begging to sell just to escape. Emily was already on her phone, recording. Mr. Lawson, you're making threats in front of witnesses. I strongly suggest you stop talking. But Derek was past caring. His face was red, spittle flying as he spoke. This meeting is over. You had your chance, you stupid old bitch. Now you're going to learn what happens when you cross me. He stormed out. Sarah stood there, tears streaming down her face, looking between me and the door. Sarah, I said softly, come home. Leave him, please. For just a moment I thought she might. I saw the doubt in her eyes, the fear, but then she shook her head. He's my husband. I have to stand by him. Her voice was barely a whisper. I'm sorry, Mom. I'm so sorry. She left. Emily turned off her recording. Well, that was productive. We now have him on record threatening you with harassment and abuse of legal process. I can probably get the restraining order extended and file for a protective injunction on the property. I didn't feel victorious. I felt hollowed out. I'd just lost my daughter. Maybe forever. But I'd be damned if I'd lose my home, too. That night, alone in my house, I allowed myself 10 minutes to cry. Then I washed my face, made myself tea, and sat down at my kitchen table with all my documents spread out. Derek wanted war? He'd get war. But he'd chosen the wrong old woman to fight. The zoning hearing was scheduled for a Tuesday evening in the city council chambers. I'd been preparing for 2 weeks, gathering documentation, coordinating with neighbors, working with Margaret Stokes to understand every procedural detail. Derek had been preparing too. I'd heard through the neighborhood grapevine that he'd been calling council members, promising campaign donations, offering incentives. He'd hired a slick presentation company to create renderings of his proposed development, all glass and modern lines. Luxury residences starting at $2,400 per month. The chambers were packed. Our entire street had turned out, plus residents from adjacent blocks who'd heard what was happening. On the other side of the room sat Derek with 3 lawyers in expensive suits and a team of consultants. Sarah was there too, sitting behind him, looking small and miserable. Council Chairman Richard Morrison called the meeting to order. We're here to consider a rezoning request for properties on Maple Street from R1 single-family residential to R4 multifamily residential. Mr. Lawson, you have 30 minutes to present your case. Derek stood, confident and polished. Thank you, Chairman Morrison, council members. What we're proposing is an opportunity to address the critical housing shortage in our community. Pinnacle Development Group has acquired 3 properties on Maple Street with the intention of creating affordable, modern housing for young professionals and families. Affordable, at $2,400 a month. I almost laughed. He continued with statistics about housing needs, job growth, tax revenue projections. His consultants showed the renderings. They'd made it look appealing. I'd give them that. The buildings were designed to blend with the neighborhood's Victorian architecture, at least superficially. And we've made every effort to address community concerns. Derek said, clicking to a new slide. We've included green space, parking requirements, exceed city code, and we're committed to maintaining the character of the neighborhood. Councilmember Patricia Hughes raised her hand. Mr. Lawson, I'm looking at the notification records. The law requires that all property owners within 300 feet be personally notified of rezoning requests. I only see evidence that 3 properties were notified, the ones you already own. Derek's consultant jumped in. We published the required notices in the municipal bulletin and on the city website. That's the minimum legal requirement, Hughes interrupted. But standard practice for residential rezoning is direct mail notification. Why wasn't that done? An oversight by our notification service, Derek said smoothly. But all legal requirements were met. Legally sufficient and ethically appropriate are 2 different things, Hughes observed. Chairman Morrison intervened. The public comment period is now open. 3 minutes per speaker. Tom Brennan went first. I've lived on Maple Street for 30 years. This development would fundamentally change the character of our neighborhood. We're talking about replacing single-family homes with buildings that would house 60, 70 people. Our streets aren't designed for that kind of traffic. Our schools are already at capacity. Speaker after speaker rose. Elderly couples worried about property values. Young families concerned about safety. A school teacher talked about overcrowding. Margaret Stokes presented traffic studies and infrastructure data proving the area couldn't handle the increased density. Then it was my turn. I walked to the podium with a folder of documents. My hands were steady. I'd rehearsed this. My name is Margaret Crawford. I've lived at 847 Maple Street for 43 years. Mr. Lawson is my son-in-law. A murmur rippled through the crowd. What he hasn't disclosed to this council is that his interest in this rezoning is deeply personal and, I believe, fraudulent. Derek shot to his feet. Objection! This is slander. Sit down, Mr. Lawson, Morrison ordered. Mrs. Crawford has the floor. I continued. 6 months ago, Mr. Lawson courted my daughter and married into my family. 4 months ago, he convinced me to transfer my property to my daughter, claiming it was for estate planning purposes. The deed was never filed, deliberately, I believe, so that he could manipulate the situation. He then attempted to force me out of my home so he could include my property in this development package. I laid out the timeline. When Derek formed Pinnacle Development, when he started buying properties, when he started dating Sarah. The dates told a story of calculated manipulation. Furthermore, I said, pulling out another document, I have evidence that Mr. Lawson has been making misrepresentations to investors about his control over the Maple Street properties. This is an email from his business partner discussing the final acquisition of my property that he has no legal claim to whatsoever. Derek's lawyer was whispering urgently in his ear. His face had gone pale. Councilmember James Rodriguez leaned forward. Mr. Lawson, is this true? Did you represent to investors that you controlled property you didn't actually own? This is taken out of context. It's a yes or no question. Derek's jaw worked. The property was intended to be part of the development package pending family agreements. So yes, Rodriguez said, you misrepresented your ownership position. Emily Henderson, sitting in the back row, was smiling. I wasn't done. I've also discovered that Pinnacle Development Group currently has 3 pending lawsuits from previous projects. Breach of contract, failure to deliver on promised amenities, and substandard construction. These are matters of public record. I'd spent hours at the courthouse pulling these files. It had been worth it to see Derek's expression now. Chairman Morrison looked at the other council members. I'm inclined to table this matter pending investigation into these allegations. Motion to deny the rezoning request, Hughes said immediately. Second, Rodriguez added. Wait. Derek stood. You can't just deny this without proper consideration. We've invested hundreds of thousands in this project. We've made commitments to contractors, investors. Commitments based on property you don't own and zoning you don't have, Morrison observed. All in favor of denial? 4 hands went up. Only 1 council member abstained. The rezoning request is denied, Morrison declared. Furthermore, I'm referring this matter to the city attorney for investigation into possible fraud and misrepresentation. This meeting is adjourned. The gavel fell. Derek stood frozen in the middle of the chaos, his lawyers packing up, his consultants already heading for the exits. The carefully constructed tower he'd built had just collapsed, and everyone had watched it happen. I gathered my papers. Sarah appeared beside me. Mom? Not now, Sarah. Please, just listen. You destroyed him. You know that, right? His investors will pull out. He'll be sued. His company is finished. He destroyed himself. He's my husband, her voice broke. What am I supposed to do now? I looked at my daughter, really looked at her. She was 34 years old, and in that moment, she looked about 12. Lost and scared and desperate for someone to tell her what to do. You figure out who you are without him, I said quietly, and then you decide what kind of person you want to be. I left her standing there and walked out into the night air. I'd won. So why did it feel so much like loss? The fallout came quickly. Within 48 hours, 3 of Derek's investors filed suit against Pinnacle Development for fraud. The emails I'd uncovered showed a pattern of Derek overstating his control over properties to secure funding. The city attorney opened an investigation. The Bar Association launched an ethics inquiry. The local newspaper ran a front-page story. Local developer accused of fraud in zoning scheme. Derek's empire crumbled, Emily called with updates. 2 of the 3 properties he bought are going into foreclosure. He overpaid, banking on the rezoning. Without it, he can't make the payments. And the investors? Demanding their money back. He doesn't have it. Bankruptcy looks inevitable. Sarah appeared at my door on a Saturday morning, looking like she hadn't slept in days. Please, Mom, can I come in? We sat in the living room where she'd grown up. He's leaving, she said. Derek, moving to Colorado. His brother has a construction business there. Tears spilled down her cheeks. He actually suggested I stay here, get an annulment, pretend the marriage never happened. Said it would be cleaner. She looked at me with devastated eyes. 8 years? And it was all just a business strategy? I put my arm around her shoulders. I'm sorry, honey. You were right about everything. You weren't stupid. You were trusting. There's a difference. I chose him over you. Yes, you did. I wasn't going to make this easy because it shouldn't be easy, but I also wasn't going to abandon my daughter. I'm filing for divorce. I don't have anywhere to go, Mom. Can I come home? You can stay here in your old room. But we're going to have rules. Family therapy. You get a better job, and you help me plant a new garden this spring. Relief flooded her face. I'd like that. Derek left town 3 weeks later, owing over $2 million. His real estate license was suspended. Pinnacle Development dissolved. The properties went to auction. Young families bought them. Our neighborhood stayed exactly what it had always been. Margaret Stokes helped me file a complaint with the state's real estate commission. Derek would never work in real estate again. One evening, Sarah and I sat on the front porch watching the sunset. Do you think you'll ever forgive me? She asked. I thought about it. Really thought about it. I already have, honey. But forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting. We have to rebuild trust. And that takes time. I have time, she said. I'm not going anywhere. I squeezed her hand. Neither am I. The house was mine again. Legally, emotionally, completely mine. Derek had tried to steal my home, my daughter, my future. Instead, he'd lost everything. Sometimes justice actually works. 6 months later, my life had transformed in ways I couldn't have imagined. The house felt alive again. Sarah and I spent weekends repainting the kitchen in soft yellow that caught the morning sun, refinishing the hardwood floors, bringing out warm honey tones hidden under years of wear. We planted the garden together, as promised. Tomatoes, zucchini, herbs, and my mother's heirloom roses that Sarah had saved cuttings from. Sarah had gotten a new job as an office manager at a medical practice, nearly doubling her salary. She was taking online courses in business administration, building a career that was hers alone. On Saturdays, we attended therapy with Dr. Patricia Rains, slowly unpacking the damage and learning how to be mother and daughter again. The neighborhood had transformed too. After Derek's scheme collapsed, we formed a neighborhood association, started regular block parties, created a phone tree for elderly residents. My house became the informal community center, hosting monthly meetings, book club gatherings. I'd never felt more connected, never felt less alone. I started volunteering at a legal aid clinic, helping seniors navigate property disputes and elder abuse cases. My experience had given me unexpected expertise and purpose. Meanwhile, Derek's life had imploded spectacularly. His brother's Colorado construction business fired him after 3 months when customers complained about his dishonesty. He tried starting a property management company, but one Google search brought up the fraud articles. His real estate license was permanently revoked. The civil suits resulted in a judgment of $1.8 million, debts he'd be paying for the rest of his life. Sarah's divorce finalized in March. Derek hadn't contested anything, signed away all claims. "It's like he wants to pretend I never existed," she said. One Saturday in April, we hosted a neighborhood spring party. 30 people filled our backyard. Potluck food, children playing in the garden we'd planted, music and laughter. I stood on my porch watching my daughter laugh with neighbors and felt complete contentment. Derek was living in a Denver studio apartment, working as a hardware store sales associate. No property empire, no schemes, no power. Just consequences. Derek had lost everything. I had gained everything that mattered. Justice was sweeter than revenge. Looking back now, I understand that giving away my house wasn't my mistake. Trusting was never the error. The mistake was forgetting my own worth, allowing others to define my value, my place, my future. I learned that home isn't just property, it's dignity. That family isn't always blood, but the people who stand beside you in the hardest moments. That being kind doesn't mean being weak, and that sometimes the most loving thing you can do is set boundaries and enforce them. To anyone facing something similar, trust your instincts. Document everything. Find your community. And never, ever let someone convince you that you deserve less than respect and dignity in your own home. What would you have done in my position? Would you have fought or walked away? Thank you for listening to my story. Remember, you're stronger than anyone who tries to diminish you.